Welcome back to the Anxious Tradeswoman podcast, where I, your host, Louise as a party, share with you the things that I've learned through the years, through the tears, so you don't have to. This is episode 12. And for those of you who are watching along on YouTube, yes, I have recorded all first 12 episodes in the first sitting. I have some crazy things going on in my life, and I decided that I would like to release an episode every week. And I looked at my schedule, and going back, referencing the burnout episode, I do know that I will need some time to lay in my bed and stare at the ceiling with everything that I've got going on for the next 2 months. So I am recording this at the end of June, and it'll be the end of August when you hear this. So I'll be back in the studio pretty soon after this comes out to record the next episodes for you. But that aside, this episode 12, is about sexism. So, good old sexism. So what I mean by sexism is when someone is very obviously treating you differently because of your gender. Yes, this does work both ways, but I will be sharing it from my experience as a female in a male-dominated space. And this kind of goes on for all of the isms. Racism, I know I personally, for those of you watching along on YouTube, I am a white woman. But I have seen in people that I respect and I'm friends with who are women and people of colour that, racism sucks. And a lot of the things that we do to, the tools we use for sexism can often have a really great impact in creating change in racism as well. So, a little side note there. So outright sexism is getting less and less in the world, but unfortunately it still is. There are different levels, from people saying, I don't think women should do this job and I won't employ you because you're a woman, to the situations that we're seeing happening in Afghanistan, which honestly causes me so much pain in my heart for those women. And, part of the reason why I make this podcast and wanted to do this stuff and give resources out to women and people for free is so that, even if it just brings them up 1% in whatever situation they're in, then it's still 1% better. And yeah, I'm just trying to do the best I can from where I am. So we all have our part to play in supporting each other. And I hope if I support someone who supports someone who supports someone who then does something for some women who are in really crazy and outright situations, then I want to be part of that. Anyway, off another sidetrack. All right. So then I want to reference back to episode 4 about self-concept. So having a really strong self-concept can really help us when we are battling sexism. So when we have a really strong self-concept that we belong here, that we're good at our trade, we're good at our job, then when people are saying things to us that are outright sexist, then they don't tend to have so much of a weight on us. They can still feel like crap, but having that self-concept in check does make life a lot easier. So, and also it brings our tolerance right down. We are good. We don't deserve to put up with any crap. So anyway, the purpose of understanding sexism is so we can understand what tools we need to create change. And yes, outright sexism is different to unconscious bias, mostly because sexism is a form of conscious bias, where the person acting out knows exactly what they're doing, let's say about 90% of the time. One of the benefits of understanding sexism is to know when enough is enough. So one of my experiences with outright sexism had a few layers to it. I had an amazing boss, and we would go and work out at other work sites and work on their machines on their sites. My boss, unfortunately, was diagnosed with cancer, and was going through the process of chemo and all of those lovely cancer things. So we ended up working pretty much full-time at this particular site, which meant my boss had less to worry about while going through the process. This particular site, it had an outright sexist owner and an outright sexist second in charge. And they weren't just sexist, they were mean to the other employees as well as the males. And they also weren't happy. But it was really different for me. They would write things on the whiteboard like women's rights here and draw a little circle, and men's rights everywhere else. And almost daily I would hear, Louise, clean up, you're the woman. One time my boss come to check on us, and the owner of the site said one of these clean up comments in front of him, and my boss said, no, he can clean up. But unfortunately my boss didn't come around too often, and I couldn't handle it anymore. I had been putting it up with it for a while because I knew the position my boss was in with his cancer treatment, but it all came too much, and I had to ask my boss to not work at that site anymore. Sometimes enough is enough, no matter what is going on. So some ways to work out when enough is enough is to first have the confronting conversation. So be specific when you have these conversations. So you can also reference back to episode 9, I believe, of having difficult conversations. This is a bit of a recap of that. So when you're having these conversations, for example, in this specific situations, I could say, yesterday when you said, clean up Louise, you're the woman, I felt it was inappropriate because we're supposed to be a team here of technicians and we should all help each other out with the cleaning. Next time, could you please share the load with everyone? Now what you can do is give them some time to see if they take on the information, and if they don't, you can make the decision if you would like to take it to HR if there's a HR in your business, or to your union, or to your group training organisation, or your labour hire company. Or you can decide it's time to leave. Sometimes enough is enough. And a really good indicator of if someone's not going to change is if they find it amusing that the behaviour bothers you, then that is kind of one of those like 10 red flags all waving at once. Is like, this guy is finding it amusing that I'm trying to stand up for myself. That is a massive, massive red flag. And it's important that we look at all the layers. So, we're looking at imposter syndrome. Sexism and unconscious bias can feed into imposter syndrome. When we look at having those difficult conversations, they go into any aspect of, any situation that's going on. When we look at our self-concept, what we believe about ourselves, when we are really strong in believing about ourselves, it's really kind of quote unquote easy to say no and not put up with crap. And, and our mental health, all this kind of thing. Like if we're struggling with our mental health, we might have something mild going on with our mental health. But if we're in a situation where we're being bullied, if we're going through sexism, if we're battling unconscious bias every day, it chips away at us and it takes away your energy, and sometimes it just cracks your mental health, and it can be really hard. So, take these with the sexism, you give it a chance. If you want to, that's also still a decision. You can just leave. Right now in this day and age, like with, not all places are the same. So I know that I have this conversation with a few people and have had it with myself where I've been in a situation where I've been bullied and I think it's my fault because I'm a bad mechanic. But really, you go to a different workplace and it's totally different. You got to kind of sit and make the decision whether it's the work that you're not liking or the people or the way that you're being treated that you're not liking it. Because so often with the skill shortage, you can jump straight into another trade-based job almost instantly. Like you can almost finish one in the morning and start one in the afternoon. Everyone is looking for people so much. So if you are in a situation where you are being treated badly and you have stood up for yourself and you're putting up with crap, you don't have to. You don't have to. All right. So if you want some help, please contact me. You can follow me on Instagram at Louise Has a Party Coaching. You can sign up for my email list at louisehasaparty.com. You can join a Facebook community, Tradeswomen Owning Their Power. And I'd also like to thank the sponsor of today's episode, which is MEGT. So MEGT is a national apprenticeship network provider, And one of the things that I'm their ambassador for Women in Trade for 2023, and they're doing some really amazing Women in Trade networking events all over the country. So if you're interested in seeing when they are, go and check out their website, www.meget.com.au, and check out if there's an event going to happen near you. They're so good, and I am going to most of them, so hopefully I will see you there. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode on sexism, and I will see you next time.